Hey, what's going on, everyone? Mike Sparacino, a.k.a. Shades here, alongside my co-host, Brendan Mulroy, a.k.a. Mulgoon, a.k.a. The Big Goon, joined today on the Backup Blueshirts podcast by none other than our friend, Liam, the Shellmaster Gotimer. Liam, what's up, man?
I'm doing well, guys. I mean, I'm extremely happy to be joining you guys in the Backup Blueshirts podcast, and I'm excited to talk some Rangers hockey. And what I want to know is, who are we dedicating the episode to, guys?
Yo, my son with the great question. None other than Jeff Bookaboom.
Bookaboom. We got Jury. That's another guy that we
Bookaboom for me, man.
all agreed on. I know. I'm just saying, guys.
Ryan
That
Spooner.
Ryan Spooner as well.
I mean,
just
Ryan
as a joke.
Spooner did give us Ryan Strome.
And there's also just some guys that from like the 50s and 70s and 80s that wore the number that I've never heard of before. So shout out to those old people that we don't know.
Also,
But,
and just double shout out to Jeff Bookaboom for winning the cup with us.
And then recently also we got
Adam Fox.
Fox is wearing it this year. So
All right, let's just dive right into business. We got 4 things to talk about. Number 1, Lias Andersson and that whole debacle of him leaving the team. 2, Kravtsov coming back to North America. 3, the Rangers' inconsistencies shining. And 4, none other, and last but not least, but our picks for the New York Rangers all-decade team. Let's get started with this Lias Andersson debacle. Liam, he ends up just makes the team out of camp after a good camp. We can't argue that. He ends up getting stapled, glued to the fourth line, whatever you want to call it. His most consistent line mates are Michael Haley and Greg McKegg.
and Smith.
And
Yes.
Brendan Smith. So he gets sent down, and lo and behold, a few weeks later, packs up his shit, leaves. And yeah, so what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think part of this is on Lias Andersson, part of this is on the Rangers and the way that they've managed him. I mean, look, it was a little bit of a pick that was off of the board at the time at number 7 overall in 2017. It wasn't a popular pick from other general managers. I think the Rangers went a little bit off the board, and it's really showed in the first couple of years of his development. Now, with that said, I don't think that putting him on the fourth line with Greg McKegg and Michael Haley is any good for his development. I think that if you want him to produce, you need to put him around productive players so he can help them, really do well. So I'm a little concerned with how Lias started the year. I certainly thought that he wasn't any better than a fourth-line player. I thought that Quinn halted his development a little bit, but when he went back to Hartford, he had a chance, much like Filipino, to really make up the ground that he lost, early on in the year, and he failed to do that. And, the fact that he went home, he took his ball and went home, it talks a lot about his character.
Definitely.
And a lot about, the type of player he's going to become, when his development is through.
Definitely.
So I think that it's best for both sides.
Listen, I gotta make one joke because I love to make jokes, but
Oh, yes.
Lias
Lias
basically went downhill. I mean, listen, dude, he was really starting to come in his zone as number 50, and then all of a sudden he changes up to 28, and
yeah, man,
you
he
know,
steps on the court,
like, dude, that's a fucking ballsy move because hockey players are superstitious as hell, man. So like, yeah, I wonder if he ever thought about that. Like, fuck, bro, I shouldn't have changed my number, man. Just as like a joke, but like, God,
I just got 2 things
thought
I
about
want to
that.
say.
Because he comes out. Did he start the year off as 50?
No.
So he started the year off as 28. What's the first thing he does as number 28? He trips over the wire on opening night.
That is very true. It all went downhill
That's
from
how
there.
you know it was going to be a bad season for him. But one thing also to say about Andersson, that one thing I don't understand is, like, moving forward, like, listen, if he felt that the Rangers weren't giving him the opportunities and whatnot, and I just feel like, why would you do that to yourself? Like, why would you leave the team, And, like, I just feel like from an outside perspective, from, like, another team's GM, like you were saying about his character, I feel like that doesn't do anything good for you, basically, moving forward in your career. I just feel like that's going to be something that's like, oh, okay, this guy literally just left the team. And it's one thing with Hedel, it was like, okay, when he went down to the AHL, it was like, you were stupid if you didn't call this kid back up, basically, because he was playing so well. But when Andersson went down to the minors, he didn't really show the Rangers enough, you know?
He had 3 points, and they all came in the same game.
And it's crazy. And another thing too, just looking back at like the past, like I hate to bring this up, like and use it now, like to put him down, but like he's shown us a little bit of that character, like prior when he threw his medal into the crowd, not for nothing, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it did rub a lot of people the wrong way when he. I mean, I think people looked at it from 2 different perspectives when he threw the medal into the crowd. On one hand, it was kind of like, wow, it's great that he doesn't want to accept second place. Then on the other hand, it's just the fact of being humble is completely thrown out the window. And Brendan, I think that's a great point when you say that that's a real clear indication of his character. I think right from that moment, the Rangers, thought something was off, and lo and behold, they were absolutely right. And furthermore, I think his trade value is absolutely nothing at this point. And
yeah,
that's
basically.
a shame for a guy who was drafted number 7 just 2 years ago.
Yeah, I know it sucks, but
just a few things. One, just to piggyback off of something both of you said earlier, he was never moved up in the lineup to be with better players, yet
Right.
Brett Howden was. And to be honest, at the time Lias was sent down, I thought both of them were playing pretty awful.
yeah.
So Howden got moved up, Andersson didn't. I think, to be honest, that rubbed off on him the wrong way from Quinn's perspective. I mean, on the perspective of, him from Quinn. You guys know what I mean. 2, he goes down, doesn't show any signs of improvement, leaves the team. To piggyback off of the character development thing and his draft position, it was a very weak draft to begin with. And you got to really think about it when you do. Number 1 and number 2 overall from that draft, Heischer and Patrick, they're not exactly lighting it up. Andersson was 7. The only 3 players that are lighting it up right now are Heiskanen, Makar, and Pettersson. And Filipino is finally looking like he's starting to come into his own, and he was 14 picks later. So the fact that we only have 4 productive NHL players so far from that draft speaks volumes about how weak of a draft that was.
Right, and I think you make a good point. And I think that piggybacking off of your point, regardless of the pick that the Rangers made in that first round, the majority of their choices was going to be a bust, or looking like it's going to be a bust. It was a very weak draft. So I see your point. As far as Lias not moving up, I mean, as far as Brett Howden, I mean, we know this, both of us, all of us. Brett Howden is a north-south type player. That's what David Quinn loves. Lias Andersson, more east-west, different type of style. And David Quinn just wasn't willing to adjust,
Personally, I think since it's happened, like, since the whole thing happened with Andersson, I mean, I've seen a little bit of an improvement, I think, from Howden. I know he scored, and yes. I feel like he looks like,
I have lately.
He looks a little bit more noticeable recently in a good way. But
yes.
And one last point I want to bring up on Andersson. I mean,
I got one last point.
It's easy for me it's easy for us to say as fans, because obviously we never played in the NHL, but I just feel like, especially when you're so young like that, I just feel like sometimes like it might, get to some of these kids' heads, like that they, he wants to be, so good. And sometimes like that reality might set in, I just feel like it hasn't set in on him yet, that like, hey, listen, man, like maybe you thought you were going to be a first liner, or maybe that's just like not reality, And I always think about it, especially with how well JT Miller's been playing this year. I always think about what happened to Miller when he first got on the Rangers with Tortorella, and how like he was always kind of like, I always joke around, like call him like Tortorella's whipping boy back in the day, because he was always getting sent down, constantly getting like bought back up and then sent back down to the AHL. And I mean, it never seemed like it actually like bothered him enough to the point where he would like leave the team, like he kind of just like did his time, and then kind of just over time kind of evolved into a better player,
Right. And just one little point, that's interesting what you said about earlier on when you said pressure. And, you look at the guy who was drafted, I believe, 1 or 2 spots before him, fellow Swede Elias Pettersson, they're very good friends, Lias Andersson and Elias Pettersson.
2 spots before him.
Lighting it up in Vancouver last year and certainly into this year. So maybe that's putting a little bit of pressure. He drafted just 1-2 spots away, and one career's trajectory is going one way, and the other just won the Calder Trophy.
Yeah.
He's heading toward multiple All-Star appearances. So, I think it's a pressure thing. I think it's a confidence thing. And I think it's a change of scenery thing. I think that the Rangers should wait it out. They shouldn't take any lowball offer for Lias Andersson. I think
because
they got to get the right deal.
I mean, they own his rights.
Yeah,
right?
and plus, Lias basically just plummeted his own trade value by doing what he did.
That's right.
And, well, since we basically touched on everything we needed to about Andersson, the one thing that I have to bring up about that draft in general is I read something the other day that the Rangers were actually pretty desperate trying to trade up from 7 to grab Makar.
Mm-hmm.
So once I read that, I was like, okay, they didn't get their guy. Lias Andersson was obviously their plan B all along.
Yeah.
So
another point on Andersson, one last thing about Andersson, too, is like, I mean, it's still so early to really tell if he's a bust. I mean, the kid's only like 19, so, it's like I think we get a little bit. I think we get a little extreme sometimes, but I mean, it's looking like that way, but you can't say for certain.
I'm just gonna say if it was 2015, this would hands down be a bust. But 2017,
but
not as much.
But not for nothing though. Too another thing with this is like, if there was gonna be a time that the Rangers made a mistake drafting, I feel like this is the time. Because they have so many guys in the pipeline, you know what I mean? But
and you could just, from a fan's perspective, you could just imagine it as the Rangers drafting Hedl at 7.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Luckily enough, Hedl's been so good that it's like I'm not even that really disappointed, Like it's like it sucks, but at the same time, with the way that he's been playing,
and also at the same time in that trade to draft Andersson, Tony D, baby.
That is true. That's true. I mean, seriously, that really ended up really being like a good trade in the end. So, I mean, because we weren't going to re-sign Stepan realistically, and it sucked to get rid of Ranta at the time. But I mean, we obviously now we have so many goalies in the pipeline. It's like you forget about it, All
right. So speaking of top 10 picks, let's move on to Vitaly Kravtsov because that's another debacle that happened, but at least he's, playing in Hartford now. He took his ball and went home after, 1 point in 5 games, Liam, if I remember correctly?
I believe so. I think he had 1 assist before he went to the KHL, yep.
Yeah, and then
he got demoted.
Demoted to the juniors, which is, I believe, the VHL?
I think it's the VHL, yes.
Yeah, and then the MHL over there is juniors, right, for them? Like the equivalent, basically?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just double-checking there, just, for my own satisfaction. Fun facts. So he doesn't do too well over there, gets demoted, comes back, which I think he should have never left in the first place. But now he's back, and honestly, he scored, I think, 2 games in a row now, or had either 2 goals in 1 game the other night. And I've seen select few highlights of him on Twitter. He's actually not that bad defensively either.
Yeah, from what I've seen, he's quite a nifty player, and like early in his development, he kind of reminds me of Philip Hedl, and that raw skill that a young player, just 18, 19 years of age has. And, I think like Hedl, it's going to take time, to get accustomed to the North American game, and to really translate that skill set, from Russia, from the KHL to the NHL. So I think he's starting to do that. I mean, it's 2 goals in his recent stint. I think he has 2 or 3 assists as well. He had a goal tonight in the win for Hartford over Providence. So all signs are pointing in the right direction.
I mean,
slow it down and be patient.
I feel like in a way with him, it's like he almost like got that reality check, like going back to Russia and then realizing that they sent him down to maybe like a freaking light bulb went off in his head or something like that,
The funny thing is, I read something along the lines of it was a conditioning stint that he got sent down in Russia, and I was just like,
okay.
That seems awfully familiar.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to grasp my head around that whole heartbeat monitor thing, but I digress. And Well, let's just say Kravtsov looks like he's got some confidence to his game now, because you're not scoring without a little bit of confidence.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think that Kravtsov, unlike Lias Andersson, that draft, 2018 draft, was a relatively strong first round, unlike the 2017 draft. So I think that there's a lot more hope for Vitaly Kravtsov and what type of player he's going to become. It's a different type of situation, and I think he has really a chip on his shoulder. And I think coming back and producing like that, it's a great sign. It really is.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to point out that the Rangers may possibly have 5 future NHLers from the 2018 draft alone. I just putting that out there.
Yep.
Like it's very possible they might have 5 NHLers, and coming from a team that, let's be honest, has not drafted well the past 6 years.
If you want to watch one of our prospects,
because I think between 2012 and 2017. Before we drafted Hedel, our best draft pick was Brady Shea.
Right, now it was late in the first round. That was like 28 or 29.
Yeah, so
I'm not gonna lie. I've watched some of the World Juniors tournament. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that, but I was watching a little bit of the U.S. Canada game just to see Miller,
and let's not forget Zachary Jones lighting it up at the World Juniors right now.
Yes, Zachary Jones and Keandre Miller. I mean, I'm excited for both of them.
Yeah.
They're going to be fantastic. I mean, Jones in the University of Wisconsin, he looks like he's going to be a stud, so.
Hey.
Especially on that power play.
I hope so, man. I mean, we really need that star defenseman.
And, when Stahl ends up, his contract does expire, the GOAT, Mark Stahl, we're going to need somebody to take over on that left side. So, I think Keandre Miller can slide in there nicely, when he gets time.
Hell yeah. He looks like a big fucking dude too. I'm not gonna lie.
This is the chain of events that's gonna happen. Mark Stahl's contract expires, doesn't re-sign. I cry. Keandre Miller makes the team. I'm happy again.
Keandre Miller can take Mark Stahl's place. He can become the new GOAT of the Rangers. You never know.
No, there's only one, the GOAT, Mark Stahl.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. So speaking of current Rangers, I mean, the current Rangers are winning, losing, winning, losing, winning, losing, win, lose, and it's very inconsistent.
Yeah, it's inconsistent, and the one thing that I really think about, or really thought about, coming out of the Christmas break was playoffs. And, I do want to see this team make a run for the playoffs, even if they don't, necessarily make it or they don't, squeak in. I think that this team has the talent to make a run for it. So,
well, I mean, I heard Quinn
came out of the break and won 2 games like that against Carolina and Toronto.
I heard Quinn saying the other day in a post game that he was saying it's a goal for the team for them to make the playoffs.
As it should be.
So, I mean, yeah, no, definitely. I'm not saying that's not. I'm sure that's every goal's team. It's excuse me, every team's goal. I just said that backwards. But
at least you call it yourself.
Unless you're just trying to absolutely tank the season, which I don't know if the teams actually try to do that, but I always joke around.
I think the Maple Leafs did the year they got Matthews.
But
yeah, Edmonton, McDavid year.
I'm not gonna lie to you though. I've actually missed the last couple games, so I'm hoping that you guys could.
I missed last night's game,
so
and as did Brendan. So.
I saw both of them. I mean, I didn't comment on last night's game in particular. I mean, for me, it was typical Toronto Rangers,
Georgiev played out of his mind.
I mean, Georgiev was fantastic, and, just much more of the same. I mean, Ryan Strome looks like the best Ranger, coming out of the winter break,
I was going to say that's probably been, like, the most consistency of the season has been from Panarin and Strome.
And
I think that's fair to say.
No, I think that's all he had.
That was literally my point. I was just saying, like, if we're actually talking about consistency, I'm saying like that. Those two have shown absolutely no inconsistency the entire season. They've just been filthy the entire time, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's huge because you can expand your lineup, and especially down the middle. If you can have Strome and Panarin, really locking it down on that line together, that gives you the opportunity to move Zibanejad down, move Zibanejad up, if you want either way, and have him play with Kreider, which he's been so good together, especially in the last.
Kreider's actually been turning it on. I have seen some of the highlights and stuff. He's really made some really nice plays.
I just want to make this comment. If we weren't in a major cap crunch next season, all these guys that we're talking about, Strome, Kreider, Georgiev, okay, well, probably not Georgiev because of Shesterkin, but we might have re-signed these guys had it not been for the cap crunch next season.
That's a good point.
And maybe we're talking playoffs this year or next year in a legitimate fashion or sense.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the hockey fan in me, the Ranger fan in me says keep Kreider because he's going to help your chances, for the playoffs. He's going to be a good player. But let me just tell you, the hockey fan in me is telling me players like him, big bruiser guys who, use their power, to score. I mean, Kreider's a little bit of a different case because of his speed. How well of, contracts have they really worked out in the past? I mean, Milan Lucic, reminds me of one. Kyle Oposo, Andrew Ladd, they all signed in the same year, similar type players. It's been a debacle all across the board. Louis Eriksson. So, something's telling me that it's a major mistake re-signing Kreider, and we should take the assets we can get while we have a chance. But I think the fact that we're close to the playoffs, it's going to make us keep them. I don't know.
I would say I would re-sign Kreider if it's cheap enough with reasonable term. And by reasonable term, I mean 4 years.
4 years, 4.75.
I mean, personally, I would give him 5.5. But that's as high as I would go. Because he's already making above 5 right now. He's basically a consistent 20-goal scorer.
I'm just interested to see what the Rangers would actually get if somebody offered them, a trade.
I think we would get close to what Arizona got for what New Jersey got for Taylor.
Yeah,
Hall,
that's
a tad less.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are saying as well.
In my honest opinion, if we can get a first and top prospect for Kreider, we have to take that deal. Because if you look at the Hall trade,
you don't want to risk going into the off season, then you're really leaving it up to him re-signing,
True, but Hall got 2 firsts and 3 prospects. Yeah. You're telling me Kreider can't get a first plus a second asset?
This is what I see about the Hall trade. I'm like,
because in my opinion,
Taylor
3
Hall
prospects and a first-round pick is equivalent to a top prospect.
Taylor Hall made it obvious that he didn't want to stay with the Devils. He literally said he wanted to be traded. So it's a little bit different.
Taylor Hall is a different caliber.
Well, that's true. That obviously.
Taylor Hall is a Hart Trophy winner.
Yeah.
He's a different caliber guy.
See,
Kreider is a good player. Don't get me wrong. 20-goal consistent scorer. But
yeah. Do you think there's any chance the Rangers would re-sign Strome?
I think there's a great chance the Rangers will re-sign Strome. I think that the Rangers love Strome, and I think the Strome loves the Rangers.
In all honesty,
that's given them an opportunity.
Exactly. I'm not worried about in the sense that if we do lose Strome, that somebody else couldn't fill that role. Panarin's just a special player. I feel like he can do that once he gets a connection with somebody. We've already seen it. I don't want to compare this connection that he has with Strome to the connection that he had with Patty Kane in Chicago, but I'm just saying now you got two different situations where he's been, on fire with somebody, I'm saying the chances of it happening again with somebody probably pretty high.
Right, absolutely. And I think if the cap hits right, I would love to re-sign Ryan Strome.
Same.
And I don't think you're going to get back what the Rangers fans, think that they should get back for Ryan Strome at this time, based on how he's produced. Yeah. Remember, this guy has the most points scored by any player that was acquired last season.
Yeah.
At any point last year. So after he was traded for.
You know what it is too. Things get different for certain teams because you know what. Even going into the trade deadline, you never know what team is going to lose a key asset moving forward for the rest of the season. And if they think that this might be their year, they might offer you a little something. They might offer you more for somebody like Kreider. It's possible. You never know. It's all in. It's all timing.
Like Colorado, St. Louis.
That's what I was going to say. St. Louis with Tarasenko being out and stuff. They could use another winger.
right? I mean, I remember, I don't know if you guys heard, but there was trade talk back in the offseason between Chris Kreider, for Chris Kreider, the Rangers and the Avalanche. And I believe it was Sean Newhook, who was a center drafted number 16 overall. I don't remember what draft it was. But he's a
recent
young
draft.
Center prospect, but the Avalanche said no. I wonder if maybe you would revisit that, see what the Avs have to
I
say.
just want to say this. If we're trading Kreider, we've gone, like, especially with Rick Nash, McDonough, and those trades, if you really think about it, we kind of went quantity over quality as it stands at this point. If we trade Kreider, we have to go for quality over quantity.
I agree with that 100%. And if that equals a first-round pick, then so be it,
Because if you really think about it, we're still lacking that true star defensive Rasmus Dahlin type of prospect, and same thing on the center end. All right, well, Crosby and McDavid are like extreme examples, but I don't even think we have a center prospect as good as Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yeah, center prospects are a little low. I think Lias Andersson might be the best one.
Let's not kid ourselves. Mark Stahl, the GOAT Mark Stahl, would be the best center of all time if he played center. Let's not
number one center, man.
Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, they should just fucking, if the Rangers are like out of the playoffs by like a long shot at the end of the season, they should just move Mark Stahl up to center.
And start a line brawl against the Islanders.
Ross Johnson versus Stahl.
That's probably the one Ranger Islander game I would pay $130 to see.
You guys want to move on to the all-decade stuff?
I think we should.
I mean, anything you guys have?
I mean, I just
to
want
offer to the.
I mean, I just want to add
topics we've talked about. You would like to add one thing?
Oh, well, I was gonna say, if we're gonna move on to the topic about Rangers decade team, we decided not to include Panarin in our decade team.
On the sole basis that he has not played even half a season yet. We made the rule amongst ourselves to include only players who have played at least one full season, which I think is a fair rule.
I think that's absolutely fair.
Yeah. And, of course, as soon as I say that and check and make my team and check other teams over the internet,
over time,
Panarin's like the first guy I mentioned. I'm like, oh, yeah, of course. But that
shows how long you've been following the team.
I just think it's more fun to come up with guys that have been on the team since like 2010. I just like going back into those rosters and like looking at the guys and you're like, oh my god, Jesus.
All right, Liam, first line forwards. What'd you come up with?
On the left, I'm gonna go left to right. I have Nash, Stepan, and Zuccarello.
Oh wow. Okay, so
I thought that Stepan was the best center of the decade. Ever since his debut, where he scored 3 goals, scored a hat trick against the Buffalo Sabres, I thought he's been the guy. And when he left in that trade, for Tony DeAngelo and what became Lias Andersson, I think that void has definitely been missed. In that number one center role. So I love having Stepan there. And Nash, I thought was excellent. That was a tough decision for me between Nash and Kreider, but
oh no, Nash was easily.
I put Rick Nash, and the only reason
Brendan, say your first forward line.
Well, I had
Nash
very close to you, Liam. I had Nash, Stepan, I had Gaborik on the right side.
Okay.
But an interesting point about Rick Nash I want to bring up, though, is I always thought, I'm like, obviously he scored 40 goals, right, with us.
Once.
But still, once. Doesn't matter. Still scored 40. It's fucking awesome. But he really, it was on the Rangers that you really got to see, Rick Nash's game evolve from, being, the offensive powerhouse to become, a really super two-way guy.
Yeah, he was legitimately one of the best two-handed players in the league.
Then you also realized, how good he was on the penalty kill and stuff like that, and I thought that was cool. But and then I just put Gaborik. I mean, I agree 100% with you on Stepan. That's why he's my number one. I mean, just the memories he gave us with scoring that Game 7 goal against the Capitals, and I always thought he was just solid. So and then also with Gaborik, they also had chemistry together. That's also why I added Gaborik on that top line. Gaborik also scored 40, and basically I always thought it was because of Stepan, because he was always just so good at passing.
I went a little off the board here. I went Nash for pretty much all the reasons we just stated. I put Mika Zibanejad as my number one center, and Zook on the right. Here's the reason why I went with Zibanejad. He hit his higher upside younger than Stepan did when Stepan was playing his best as a Ranger.
True.
Stepan never got 30 goals.
True.
Stepan never got 70 points. He never even got 60.
True.
And honestly, you can't overlook Mika Zibanejad in the 2017 playoffs.
Well, I was going to say,
I understand. I understand why you got. I understand why you guys put Stepan, but I had to put Zibanejad because he hit a higher upside younger.
I mean, it's hard to really make an argument. I mean, you could have basically went either way. I mean, I have Zibanejad on my second line. I mean, I could have easily put him first, but I see.
Brendan, go with your second.
I just line. I like Stepan at number one. He's got more playoff games than Zibanejad, obviously. I just went with the fact that he has more games so far. I don't know if that's unfair or not, but
what's your second forward line? Go.
Second forward line. I mean, I kind of had like a mashup on this one. I don't know if I would really. I didn't necessarily have an order of the lines. I'll kind of just throw them together. I mean, my centers are kind of locked in, but I had Kreider, Zibanejad, and then also I love Ryan Callahan, so I put him. Like I said, I didn't necessarily have an order. I mean, I guess I would probably throw him on the fourth line, but in this lineup I have him on my second line. But maybe I'd move somebody like St. Louis, but I put Callahan. So I have Kreider, Zibanejad, Callahan.
Liam?
I have, sorry.
No, I was saying, yeah, your turn.
Oh, okay. I have Kreider, Zibanejad, same as you, Brendan, and then I have Gabrick on the second line. You know, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense chemistry-wise. But, you know,
that was not a factor in my lineup.
Chemistry. I mean, I'm not even rating this on, like, if I would put these guys, like, I don't know.
Right.
Some of them were kind of a mashup. Like, I don't know if I would actually throw Ryan Callahan on my second line. He would probably be on my fourth line. But whatever, you know.
I went
kind of winging it.
I went Kreider, Stepan, Gabrick.
Okay.
That's a pretty
the reason I went with Gabrick over Callahan, 2 40-goal seasons speak for themselves.
Obviously, I mean, definitely.
And that 3 overtime goal in 2012 playoffs against the Capitals in Washington will always
that helped his
stay
stock.
in my heart forever.
That helped his stock.
That helped his stock a bit. But, you know, for me, you know, I had to put Zuccarello number 1 right wing. You know, there's no question in my mind. I think he's probably been the most important Ranger of the decade outside of Henrik Lundqvist.
That's true.
So, you know, that's where I have Marian Gabrick. And he had 229 points with the Rangers in just 4 seasons. So he was efficient.
I would actually, you know what, I would take that back too. I would probably, I mean, if we're going to
my team is locked in. My team's
I would
locked in.
I would definitely move Zuccarello. The reason I didn't actually say Zuccarello is because I fucked up and I put Zuccarello on the left side by accident. So the
what a dingus.
I crossed Zuccarello out, and then Callahan was past Zuccarello when I crossed him out. So that's why I'm all fucked up. That makes sense.
It's good.
All right. Let's.
Why don't you start us off?
Kreider was actually like my lock-in second line left wing. I mean, I couldn't put anybody above him besides Nash. So that's the reason. I mean, Kreider's legitimately been the third longest tenured Ranger, and that also had something to do with it. Yeah. That wasn't a huge, like, that was a very, very small factor, but tiny factor. Third line, left wing, Carl Hagelin, Derek Brassard, Ryan Callahan.
Interesting.
Who did you have, Liam?
I had JT Miller on the left.
You know what? I was actually thinking about that, and we were talking about, you know, just when we were talking about prior, because we were talking about defense, which we'll get to. But I mean, especially with what Miller has done this season, it's definitely. I actually thought about it, and I think I would actually put him in my team too, especially with how well he's played this season.
Absolutely. And, you know, I look back at Miller's tenure with the Rangers. I think he was a brilliant Ranger, and I'll explain why. This guy, you know, you look at guys who had struggled to stay at the NHL level. JT Miller is that guy. You know, he has struggled to find consistency in the lineup.
Yeah, we were talking about it before.
Yeah, he turned himself into a legitimate top 6 player. And, you know, for 172 points, you know, with the Rangers, 72 goals, 100 assists, I'll absolutely take that. So I think he deserves to be on the third line. Then I have Brassard in the middle, Callahan on the right, much like you did, Mike. So
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, Callahan, captain. That speaks for itself, ever so slightly. But at the same time, I was just like, if you really looked at our list of right wings, after Zook, Gabrick, and Callahan, it kind of falls off a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So that was basically the main reason Callahan was on the third line. I mean, Derek Brassard was just a monster as a Ranger.
Yeah, unbelievable playoff.
But I couldn't put him above Stepan and Zibanejad. And Hagelin, because I think Hagelin was very underappreciated as a Ranger until we no longer had him. Then people realized, oh, this guy brought a lot more than just his speed.
He was also very good in the playoffs at scoring goals.
Exactly.
When you needed him to score. Shockingly, he would score goals in the playoffs.
And I mean,
so like Mike,
being one of the fastest skaters in the league.
I actually did have Carl Hagelin as well. So I had Hagelin, Brassard, and I put St. Louis on my third line, right wing.
Oh, he was left wing.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, so now I'm all fucked up now. So I go on Hockey Reference, and it said he was a right wing on the Rangers. That's why it fucks me up. So, what did you?
I thought he was left wing.
Well, I thought St. Louis played on the right.
Okay, so
I looked on, I don't know, Wikipedia or some
whatever.
shit. I checked a bunch of different things.
We'll say he's a right wing in my case here. So I like the pick of St. Louis just because of when you think back to the Cup run for the Rangers in 2014, it's basically impossible to not think of Marty St. Louis at some point in time. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I mean, he was basically the driving force of the entire playoff run with what happened with his mom and everything. So I put him on there.
Yeah, I think for the playoff run,
I think that's kind of cheap, I guess, of a reason, but I don't know. I just did it from the memory standpoint. Fuck, you're always gonna remember that shit.
I'm just gonna start off with my fourth line: Marty St. Louis, Brian Boyle, Jesper Fast.
Interesting.
Because honestly, Boyle was another one of those. I don't want to say he was underrated, but I mean he was one of the better bottom six forwards, especially bottom six centers in the league. And I don't think Rangers fans realized that until we didn't re-sign him. St. Louis, I mean, he barely made it onto the team because if you really look past the 2014 playoffs, the next season was not very good. But like Brendan said, his mom and everything, the cup run to the final, without him, we don't make the Stanley Cup final. That's why he's on the list. Or that's why he's on my team. And Jesper Fast, because it was between him and Grabner only played a season and a half. So I didn't. We ended up trading him after a season and a half. So I was just like,
he was very
Fast was. I think he deserves it a little more just based on games played.
And also Grabner was on the Islanders. No, I'm just
honestly, that didn't even go through my head at this point, in this process at all.
Fucking around.
What are you guys' fourth lines?
Go ahead, Liam. You say yours first.
Well, I had Hagelin on the left. I mean, same reasons as you, Mike. I mean, again, I thought Hagelin was not appreciated enough, before he left. I mean, again, much like Derek Brassard, he had his best years with the Rangers. So, I think that you can appreciate that. In the middle, I have Kevin Hayes. I put Hayes on the fourth line center because he was an important part of that playoffs. He was a key playoff performer. He really grew into his role. He came in as a young guy, right out of college, and he really developed, into a top six guy. And much like JT Miller, like I said before, but he's really turned himself into a top six center, and that he really deserves a lot of credit. And he was a great Ranger. So, he had 87 goals, 129 assists, 216 points, with the Rangers. So I got to give him credit there. And then on the right, Mike, just like you, Jesper Fast. I mean, you got to look how many years he's been with the Rangers and just what he brings. He may not bring goals. He may not get 20 goals. He may not even get 15 goals for you on the season, but he brings intangibles that every team needs. And I think every single team in the league would love to have a Jesper Fast on their fourth line.
Yeah,
so
and if you look at 2014 to 2017, he was pretty solid.
And Liam, just to
and he's fallen off a little bit since then.
Just to confirm, Liam, you had JT Miller on the left side, right?
I did. Yes.
Okay.
What was your fourth line?
Well,
Brendan.
Now that I'm looking at this together, I would have left winger as JT Miller, I would have my center as Brian Boyle, and then I would put Callahan on the fourth line. Man, that's a fucking grinder line right there. Imagine Brian Boyle, JT Miller, and Ryan Callahan. I will say, though, I had some honorable mentions, I would say. I could put Hayes on an honorable mention, I would say. He would be my... We were talking about if you had to add an extra guy. I had some question marks. He was one of them, so I put Hayes. Another guy I just kind of threw down. I thought we could talk about this because, I mean, he was another guy that you kind of think of from the 2010, through like 2012. But I put Doobie, just throwing that out there as well. Just I always thought he was kind of like a heart guy,
Oh, dude, Dubinsky was my favorite Ranger when I first started watching the Rangers. So
I just threw him on there just because you can't. I feel like you can't talk about like the mid 2000 Rangers. Well, I don't know if that's mid 2000,
early 2010s,
early 2010 Rangers without mentioning Doobie and Callahan.
Okay, before we move on to the defensemen, I just have to say I have to get this off my chest because it's been bugging me for a couple minutes now. Liam, I will argue to death with you about how Hayes was not a key playoff performer, but I am not going to go any further on that. I had to get that off my chest.
I'll go back and forth with you if you want. I mean, I have a couple goals that really stand out. I mean, you remember that game that led the Game 7, where he did score that goal in regulation, tip in between the legs of Braden Holtby. And then
that pass was all JT Miller.
Game 1-1. Then we won in overtime. There are a couple of key moments. Kevin Hayes, remember, in Pittsburgh, in game...
He can thank Marty St. Louis for that.
What's up?
If Marty St. Louis doesn't put the puck in front, Hayes doesn't score there.
Still, you can't make that argument, though, Shades. That's a weak argument, Shades. I'm with
you
on this one.
That's a weak argument, Shades.
He had two.
He scored that goal.
He had 2 goals in 60-something playoff games.
I thought that he was a productive player.
I highly beg to differ.
He played it well, and I thought that he turned himself into a real good player. I really
see. I like Liam's argument on the Hayes because he's talking about moving forward as well.
No, this was strictly based on Rangers' tenure for me.
I love Brian Boyle. I thought he was a fantastic Ranger. But when I looked at the numbers and I saw 44 goals, 46 assists, and 90 points, I just saw Kevin Hayes as a much better player when he was on the Rangers. Just simply put, sure, was he inconsistent? Was he invisible sometimes? He certainly was. But that raw talent, that raw skill, we saw every single night. So, I thought he was a good player. I thought he deserved to be over Brian Boyle, although it was close. But just based on the numbers, that's why I put
True.
Him there.
Yeah, Boyle was more of a character
I just want to say
for me.
Brian Boyle had more goals in the 2012 playoffs alone than Hayes had in 5 years as a Ranger. That's a proven fact.
Well, regular season, you can certainly give it...
well, see, and that's another big reason why I think I put Boyle as well. I mean, he was just clutch as fuck in the playoffs for some reason.
Yes, dude, 2012, he went off. All right, can we move on to the defenseman? Because I will start an argument here. I don't want to do that. Can we please? All right. Can we all just agree that all of our first pairs were McDonough-Girardi?
Yes.
Yeah, I had the same thing.
There's literally no argument there. They were literally our top pair for the first 7 years of the decade.
Yeah. I mean, also just based on Rangers' tenure as well, you have to put Girardi,
I mean, he's a shoo-in for any spot in the lineup.
Basically, yeah. I mean, and McDonough, I mean, he took over the captaincy after Callahan. Wasn't easy, and he was... I think at the end of his Rangers tenure, he kind of got shitted on by Rangers fans because he really wasn't playing well. But I mean, especially 2014,
definitely a downplay.
He was just a guy that was fucking always playing injured, like Girardi. They were just both really good character guys. Just
that and
Girardi out there on the ice.
Girardi just loved blocking fucking shots.
They were literally the epitome of the Rangers defense, though.
Yeah,
really just lockdown. Defensive defenseman, in your face. Even though McDonough, I don't know if I would consider him defensive defenseman, but I mean, he was definitely
He was
more of an
able to-
offensive defenseman than Girardi was, but
McDonough was able to hold his own most of the time.
both also all-stars at some point. So,
That is very true.
what about pairing number 2? Who did you put on that?
You talking to Liam or me?
I'll talk with Liam. What did you have for your second pair?
I had Stahl on the left, Strawman on the right.
I had the exact same
I had
thing.
the same exact pair.
See, Strawman is another one of those Rangers who was very underappreciated and, in my opinion, also underrated when he was on the Rangers.
Strawman very underrated.
See,
his play hasn't really disintegrated since he left. Like other players. Like you could say about Boyle, like Hagelin.
Yeah.
Like Strawman's just, if he hasn't gotten better, he's stayed consistent with Tampa and with
See, the
Flyers.
thing is too is
it helps when you play with Victor Hedman.
Not for nothing, but after the 2014 playoffs, I mean, when they didn't re-sign Strawman, I feel like that was like we downgraded our D.
We signed Dan Boyle.
We definitely.
I didn't need to be reminded of that, Brendan.
I also put Dan Boyle on a questionable. I put the question mark
Oh, yeah.
solely based on the fact I know it would piss Shades off when he saw it, so I did it on purpose. But I agree. I mean, Mark Stahl, that's obvious. I mean, based on just the amount of years he's played with the Rangers, and it's unfortunate he really got that really bad freaking eye injury and all his injuries,
Right, but he still had some great moments.
No, absolutely. I'm just saying, I'm just saying, like, it sucks that happened to him, because especially when it was your own fucking brother as well. That doesn't help, but...
Yeah. No, dude, Stahl, like, at the beginning of the decade, I mean, he was a legitimate shutdown defenseman, and then the injuries kicked in.
Yeah. So...
And he forgot how to skate, too, but that's a different story.
Listen, he's just fucking getting old now, right? Give him a
that's
fucking
true.
break.
You know what?
The GOAT
You gotta
mark
give
stuff.
credit where it's due. He found a way to stay in the lineup.
That's true.
That's true.
It's true.
That's
You
true.
know, so you don't stay in the lineup for that many consecutive years without bringing something to the table. So I think Stahl, regardless of his injuries, he deserves to be here.
And
Let's move on to the
let's
third
move on
pair.
to the last pair. Who'd you
I
have?
actually fucked up on my notes here. I don't know why.
I didn't...
I could have sworn I fixed it, but I didn't.
Who'd you put, Liam? Last pair.
I had Kevin Klein and Keith Yandel.
I had the same exact pair.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, with Yandel, also,
I
even
think
though...
this is one of the very rare instances where me and Brendan legitimately 100% agree on the same thing.
I mean, not for nothing, not to talk shit about a lot of the defensemen we had over time, but I just feel like when you look at all the rosters that we've had and then look at all these guys, they just, to me, they stuck out the most,
Yeah.
I mean, off the top of my head, I really don't even remember how many years Klein was on the Rangers.
Only about 3, I think.
I mean, but obviously he was just very solid for us in the Cup Finals and all that. So, yeah,
Kevin Klein was a solid top 4 D, and he
Well, when we first got him.
Well, yeah, at the end there he kind of dropped off. I agree, but what were you gonna say, Liam?
kept himself in the lineup, So,
Well, and that's another, and
that's
that's obviously Yandel's biggest thing. I mean, he's still the fucking Iron Man in the NHL right now after Cogliano lost it like 2 years ago. But
that's still bullshit, but that's another discussion.
But still, I mean, with Yandel, like you said, I mean, I thought that he probably could have been a little better on the Rangers, but like you said, you thought that he played it well, which I'm not going to disagree with.
He got caved in by AV.
Yeah.
But
He did.
yeah, I'd still put Yandel
But
over Brady Shea. I legit had to think about this for a good 5 minutes. I'm just like, Shea has been here longer,
Yeah.
but he fell off after his rookie season. And Yandel was basically still that player, but he was just so caved in under AV that kind of ruined him. He didn't ruin himself as a player. And Brady Shea, to me, was just like, what I've seen so far from him, I couldn't put him over Yandel.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Mike. I mean, to be honest with you, if I actually had to, pick somebody maybe in a couple of years who I think could make this list for the next decade, I would
Could be Brady Shea.
I actually would go with Fox, honestly, over Shea.
Well, I mean,
in all honesty.
Shea is lefty, Fox is right D.
Oh, okay. But still, I just meant like in terms of if I had to choose one defenseman who's playing on the season now that in 5 years or so
Fox.
or less than that could be a guy that you look back on and you're like, wow, that was one of our best defensemen of the decade when it's time. I think Fox. I mean, what do you think, Liam?
Yeah, I agree. And, just real quick, I just want to go back to Yandel. I think a lot of people, when they look at Yandel's time with the Rangers, why they look down upon it, a tad, is because what they gave up for him and what the Rangers got back in return when they ended up moving on from him. The Rangers gave up a first-round pick. They gave up Anthony Duclair in that deal to get Keith Yandel. Although Duclair did not turn into a superstar with the Coyotes.
He's playing some goddamn good hockey right now, though.
Yeah, along with the first-round pick was a haul. And the fact that when we got rid of Keith Yandel, we only got a 4th-round pick and a 6th-round pick from the Florida Panthers. Now, granted, that was when they just traded his rights away to the Panthers, and then they signed him to an extension.
Yeah.
I think that left a lot of sour tastes in Ranger fans.
Oh, definitely did.
I mean, in terms of like pure skill, honestly, out of all the guys we named, I mean, pure skill alone, I mean, I think I would have to say Yandel is probably the most skilled out of everybody that we listed. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. No, I have to agree with that.
I mean, he's obviously special, and that's another reason why I pick Fox. I mean, as a guy, I could see making the next decade's team for the defenseman. I mean, he's just so disgusting at getting out of the zone.
Not even after one season, not even after half a season.
Yeah.
No, I wonder. I wonder how good our defense is going to be when we actually,
and
get
good coach just again. If we want to bring up obviously
not a shot at Quinn, other coaches,
a guy that we think would obviously make it from forwards is obviously we know in a decade we're going to be saying Panarin,
Kakko
was our best fucking. But we decided not to put Panarin. Obviously, that was going to piss people off, but whatever. But I don't know. I like the lineups that we choose. It reminds me of those. It reminds me a decade of Rangers hockey.
And moving on to goalies, I think we all know who's number one. Who's the starter?
Kevin Weeks.
Marty Biron, baby.
Steve Alcat.
Did he show you the stats? Because if he didn't, he's not number one.
Well, who did show me the stats? The number one goalie, and that's Henrik Lundqvist. 458 wins, 306 losses, 96 overtime losses, 918 career save percentage, 2.43 goals against average. Like you mentioned before, a Vezina Trophy winner and the 5th all time in goalies.
Yeah, 5th
and most wins by
5th
European
all time
as well.
Vezina.
I mean,
just absolute filth.
I mean, we might as well just say it now. Future Hall of Famer Lundqvist.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
Everything but a cup. That's it.
Basically.
Yeah,
and you literally can't blame him for that.
Not at all.
No. He dragged offensively inept teams way further than they should have gone. Let's be honest.
I think that you can't blame him for the lack of a Stanley Cup. You can only thank him for what he gave to us and how far we got. Because most of those playoff runs we shouldn't have even gotten, to where we got.
And we're also
look at the Washington series, all of those.
Now that we're talking about Hank, let's also just talk about Liam. I don't know if you've seen it, but have you seen that commercial with Lundqvist by any chance that just came out?
No, but I didn't get.
Oh my god! All right, I'm not gonna ruin it for anybody, but go to Henrik Lundqvist's Twitter when you get the chance.
Okay.
Absolutely hilarious commercial. It's in Swedish, but there's translations at the bottom for English in the video. But you're gonna die laughing.
I'll check it out.
And then, all right. So who do you have as backup? I think we agree on Talbot.
Yeah, Cam Talbot.
Yeah, I'd say Cam Talbot after careful deliberations, but
and let's also honestly, Talbot's another guy. Like when you think of the 2014 season, I mean, dude, he really stepped up because Lundqvist went down with injury, and fucking Talbot was on an absolute tear.
2015.
2015?
That was 2015.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, sorry guys, 2015. Jesus Christ.
Come on, dude. 2014 was Marty Biron retiring because of Thomas Hurdle.
But 2015, yes. Sorry.
Yeah, that was the tipping point in the debate, in the inner debatings in my mind.
And I'll never forget it. That night, fateful night, I believe it was against Carolina, where Lundqvist got hit with a shot in the neck area. Did not have protection. Talbot came in.
Oh no, he had protection.
I'm sorry.
He had protection. McDonough lifted his fucking whatever the fuck
with
the cover
stick on the block, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it did get his neck regardless, and Talbot stepped in and carried the Rangers to the playoffs in the President's Trophy that year, I believe. So
that is true. And let's also not forget that Hank stayed in the game and played the next game before doctors said, yeah, you got to stop playing.
Yeah, what a soldier. Cam Talbot, though, 2.00 goals against average, 931 save percentage. I wanted to put Ranta in that spot, but those stats just wouldn't allow me to. He was a terrific Ranger, and I think Benoit Laird deserves a ton of credit for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely. I mean, he deserves a lot of credit for the work he's done with the Rangers' backup goalies, minus Pavlik, basically. But, I mean, he's been...
Honestly, I didn't think Pavlik was
Nah,
terrible.
he just came to the Rangers at, like, a really bad time.
Weird time.
We were just really,
We were in between backup
it was basically
goalies,
it was the changing of the Rangers.
He was basically a stopgap backup.
Yeah.
More or less.
But, I mean, the goalie pipeline now is looking pretty goddamn good.
Yeah, seriously.
So, I mean, Georgiev has been out of control. He's our honorable mention. I think we can agree on that. But
as far as goalies,
that's what I mean. Yeah, our goalie honorable mention.
No, my honorable mention's still Ranta.
You think so?
Yeah, dude. Georgiev hasn't played, he hasn't even been the backup for 2 full seasons yet.
Fair
yeah.
enough.
I would put Georgiev, but I had to put Ranta. 44, 27, 14, 921 save percentage, 2.25 goals against average. If Talbot wasn't as dominant as he was, this would be Ranta's without a shadow of a doubt. But,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Talbot he came in at the right time, and he played his best hockey as a New York Ranger, so that's why he's there, in my opinion.
Definitely.
I agree.
You guys want to go through some honorable mentions, skater-wise? If you have any.
for it.
Grabner was an honorable mention for me.
Honorable. What about you, Brendan?
Yeah, I also had Grebner. I also just at center I threw a bunch of names down. I had Doobie, like I said earlier, and I also had Brad Richards as one. Just threw that down. Not that I even thought he was really that good when he was on the Rangers, but whatever. But
guys, can we
Got
not
bought out, man.
can we not forget that we had Nathan Gerby? I'm sorry, I had to say that.
We had David Desharnais as well.
Yes, we did. For a
also
full season.
Actually, you know what, Liam? I got you with one. Honorable mention at center, Sean Avery.
You know what?
I forgot he was on the team at the beginning of the decade.
Good point. Another honorable mention, guys. Dominic Moore sealed that Game 6.
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. You're right.
Dominic Moore was another one I also thought of as well.
And the unfortunate situation, when I believe his wife passed away, he left hockey for about a season and a half, came back with the Rangers in 2014 and was huge.
Yeah, dude, he
in the
was
regular season as a
really good,
fourth-line
man.
guy, so he deserves an honorable mention.
What about
Yes, he
Benoit
does.
Pouliot? Anybody have him?
Nah, for one. Dude, he
he
only
ran
had
from,
16 goals looking back, even though that line was filthy.
That line, Brassard, Pouliot, and Zuccarello. Little did we know that Zuccarello would be manning the top line a couple years later. It's crazy.
Dude, I still miss Zook.
You guys remember when Pouliot signed a 5-year,
Oh, with
$30 million deal in Edmonton right after?
oh yeah,
Hey, same with frickin' Talbot too, right? He signed a pretty monster contract.
Yeah, Talbot. Yeah, now,
He's kind of been like
and
yeah, he
Mikko
hasn't been good now.
Mikko Koskinen signed a 3-year extension with 14 games under his belt.
But Talbot's bouncing back, a little bit in Calgary. So, we'll see. For sure.
All right, well that's about all I got for this episode. What about you
Oh,
guys?
yeah.
Got anything else?
I mean, the Rangers going through Western Canada next week. Edmonton,
Yes.
Vancouver, and Calgary. I think we'll be able to take care of them.
I just want to see more consistency.
I
That's
wonder if the
really
Vancouver game's going to be high scoring.
Look, if the Rangers are able to come out with 4 out of 6 points out of this Western Canada swing after getting the last 4 points in those 2 games, that will show me the consistency. But they
Because
can't
shit, dude,
pull back.
Vancouver scores a lot of fucking goals. Dude.
I also just want to see less than 40 shots against when Hank plays.
Oh, yeah, Mike, you know what? Why don't you bring up that stat that you had texted me, like...
Oh, yeah, real quick. About
This
a
is
week
what-
and a half ago, I looked up, or I was going through Twitter and found something that was the goal support for each goalie in the National Hockey League. Talbot ranked 6th, but 2 goalies in front of him combined had less than 15 games, so I kind of threw those two out the window. So Georgiev was basically 4th. Hank was like 30th or 31st, and I'm just like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It does, and I think Hank gets a lot of unnecessary flack.
Yeah, he does.
And you know, I got to give David Quinn credit. You know, David Quinn came under a lot of pressure to put Alexander Georgiev in that number 1 spot. I believe he played in back-to-back games last week against Toronto, and he got shellacked 6-3. You know, at home. And I think he sent the message to the fans, like, you know, Georgiev is great, but he's not Lundqvist. Lundqvist is our number 1.
Yeah.
He's going to stay that way.
I was going to say that with Georgiev, too. He's actually gotten lit up a couple times this year. He's also had some pretty amazing games as well. So
He has. And that's a little side note for me. I mean, that's something that really grinds my gears. I don't know about you guys when people write off Rick Lundqvist.
Oh, yeah, of course, man. It pisses me off.
I think that he's having one of his best years. You know, 37 years old. You know, he's playing like he's in his prime. So
I just want to also point out the fact that his save percentage has basically been the same the past 2-3 years, but his goals against has skyrocketed, and people look at that, but I'm just like, you guys do realize he's facing like twice the amount of shots he was compared to like 3-4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And then like nobody has a good response to that. They kind of just start cursing him out, cursing me out, and I'm just like, all right, well, you're stupid. So
Yeah.
even though I don't say that, because I'm just, as soon as I start getting cursed out, I kind of just ignore people.
Right.
That's how I get through my shifts at work. Anyway, so that's all I got. All right, well, this was episode number 23 of Backup Blue Shirts. Not the Michael Jordan episode, even though it is, but wrong sport. Dedicated to Jeff Bukaboom, 94 Cup champ with the New York Rangers. Everyone, please, for the love of God, stop the Hank bashing.
Please.
Give the man some love. Follow us on Twitter at Backup Blue Pod. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Backup Blue Shirts Podcast. Go follow my boy Liam on Twitter. Liam, what's your Twitter handle?
Liam_Gotimer.
Also,
GOT.
Liam, might as well shout out your podcast as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
Please listen to the Penalty Box podcast on iTunes and Spotify.
Good shit. It's good stuff.
That is the Penalty Box Podcast.
Liam, thanks for coming on, dude, as always.
My pleasure, guys.
And just remember, follow us on Twitter.
Stop
Subscribe
the
to
Hank
us on
bashing.
YouTube. Stop the Hank bashing.
Go watch
And,
and listen to Liam's podcast.
That and last comment of the year.
Oh, yeah, that's
Stay.
true.
What was that?
I was going to say let's go Rangers, but, you know.
That's a pretty good one.
I was gonna say stay
Show
classy,
masters.
Rangers fans, but let's go Rangers is good too.
And Brendan, we're going to find out who the real Chellmaster is tomorrow.
The showdown begins.
I don't know, Liam. I'm actually safe to say. Oh no, I was gonna say maybe you have you beaten me in Shell this year yet? I don't know if you actually have.
So the only time, for your information, for your viewership pleasure, the last time I beat Brendan was in overtime. A spectacular performance by Matt Murray,
That's
as
right.
much as it pains me to say it, for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But I believe that was over a year ago, Brendan. So
Yeah, because I was gonna say there's no way that's 2019. So
I
I
just
actually
wanted-
haven't lost to Liam yet this year, so maybe he'll. I feel like you're gonna pull through when maybe tomorrow, Liam.
I just want to say
Well, let me
that
tell you,
statement
Brendan.
made me want to punch a wall right now.
I want the Coyotes. I want all the smoke.
Oh shit, dude, that's intense. Well, we'll find out what happens. I'll have to update everybody.
We'll update everybody on Backup Blue Pod on Twitter. Give us the follow.
On the Capo Caco episode, number 24.
Oh, we're getting there. We are getting there. All right, everybody, thank you very much for listening. Check out Liam's podcast. Follow us on check his podcast out on Twitter. No, I fucked that up. Check his podcast out on iTunes and Spotify, right?
Yes. Tell me about it.
Check
Yeah.
out our podcast on YouTube. It's Backup Blue Shirts. Follow us on Twitter, Backup Blue Pod. Happy holidays to everyone. Happy New Year. And let's go Rangers.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Have a good one, Liam.
Yep, take care.